can't move now. Last time, apparently, the microphone made a lot of noise. Got an email, someone saying, so I tried to be a little more careful today. Okay. So, should we start with the prayers? Most of you've got the prayers, I think. Anyway, they're not many. First I have to look for them. Oh yeah. Okay. And of course, more important than the words are the thoughts we have at the same time, so to focus on the meaning of what we're going to recite. Until I reach enlightenment, I take refuge in the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Supreme Assembly. By accumulating merit and wisdom through generosity and the other perfections, may I attain Buddhahood for the benefit of all sentient beings. Until I reach enlightenment, I take refuge in the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Supreme Assembly. By accumulating merit and wisdom through generosity and the other perfections, may I attain Buddhahood for the benefit of all sentient beings. Until I reach enlightenment, I take refuge in the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Supreme Assembly. By accumulating merit and wisdom through generosity and the other perfections, may I attain Buddhahood for the benefit of all sentient beings. May all sentient beings have happiness and the causes of happiness. May all sentient beings be free from suffering and the causes of suffering. May all sentient beings never be separated from the happiness that is free from suffering. May all sentient beings abide in equanimity, free from attachment and anger that holds some close and others distant. I pay homage to the Sublime Mother of the victorious ones of the three times, the inexpressible, inconceivable, and indescribable perfection of wisdom, which is unborn, unceasing, and of the nature of space, and which is the object of realization of the self-knowing primordial wisdom. Okay. All right, so I sent you the new handout, and then today I added something. So I have to resend it. I'll of course put it in the WhatsApp group. You can always get it from there. Or if anyone is not part of the group, please let us know. And then we can send it to you in a different way. But there's two changes. One change already made and one, well, I just want to add something that I find important. So I'm going to add that today or tomorrow and then resend you everything. But just to remind you, we are talking about now the Bodhisattva path, of course. Last time we had a long discussion. This was actually based on a question Rika had. She asked this last year, what's going on? Why do we study all this advanced stuff? Why not stick to the basics? And last time I gave an explanation, I actually made it part of this handout, saying there are at least 3 reasons why this makes sense. Our practice becomes a lot more, it has more of a direction, it has more of a purpose. And of course, there are beginner levels of all these practices that we can do now. This is why we study this. I mean, we need to look for things we can do right now, even though they're very advanced on the level of a bodhisattva. But the baby level, we can do that. I mean, talking about generosity, of course, a bodhisattva is so unbelievably generous. But we all have generosity to some degree. We are generous with certain people. And we just need to improve that. We need to deepen that. We need to strengthen our generosity. Love, compassion in the same way. We all have love and compassion. But of course, it's quite restricted. It's quite limited. Limited in terms of the people. There are just few people we have compassion for if they're close to us. And also, it doesn't usually last. If some self-interest comes in, to help this other person, again, motivated by compassion. I'm kind of busy, maybe someone else, and so forth. Whereas a bodhisattva, is someone who's got this unbelievable compassion. It doesn't mean that they always, just hang out with this one person to help them. No, I mean they're motivated by great compassion, but that means they're trying to help as many people as possible, and of course mainly work on their own mind to be greater benefit. If you want to become a doctor, for instance, to take a ordinary analogy, like a worldly analogy, you really want to help other people. So you still have to train yourself to become a doctor. You're not going to go out into the field and start surgery or whatever. No, I mean, you harm yourself, you harm others, and you harm yourself in that way. Therefore, a lot of the practice of the Dharma is of transforming our own mind to become better at helping others become more effective. But that doesn't mean we don't need to do, we shouldn't be doing things at the same time. Yes, we do, but the focus is very much on the development of the mind. Okay, so since we study Chandrakirti's entering the middle way, which of course, as you know, the focus is mainly on emptiness, and we start actually with the third level of a bodhisattva, one of the more advanced levels of a bodhisattva, when you realize emptiness directly. Therefore, we have now an introduction just to the first two levels, that the text doesn't really address. To give you an introduction, how do you get onto the bodhisattva path? Okay. Now, last time we discussed the fact that we need to generate bodhicitta, of course. I mean, I also talked about that spiritual practice is very compared to a journey. Spiritual journey, of course, that word is used in different contexts. So in the Buddhist context as well, like you talk about a spiritual journey. So you enter a path following a vehicle. So you have these 5 stages. 4 of them are when you're still a bodhisattva, and the last stage is when you're a Buddha. And there's certain things you do, mental practices that we engage in order to enter the path in the first place. So what else could it be than the wish to do it? Basically, bodhicitta is the wish to become, of course, fully awakened, to reach the awakened state of a Buddha, become fully enlightened, which is nothing else but removing from our mind what's extra. All the folds and limitations that are on our mind right now, well, they need to be removed. And that is enlightenment. To put it shortly, I mean, to define enlightenment, which is really hard to do, but it's basically removing from our mind what is not part of the mind, which is not really in the nature of the mind. Like right now, it's part of it. Our anger, our attachment, our jealousy, all these are, yes, you could say part of the mind right now, but they're not in the nature of the mind. So the analogy that is given is, it's too far.
Just some bubbly sound.
Okay, some bubbly. Maybe these are too close to each other? Yes. Okay. So I really stopped moving. So to our anger, our attachment, all these afflictions, thank you, all these afflictions, they're not in the nature of our mind. It's like, for instance, water. If you have muddy water, it seems like inseparable. The water and the mud seem inseparable, but of course the mud can be removed and you can have clean water. Let's think of our mind. We can think of our mind in the same way to really get the image. So without being too technical about it, just think of your own mind as actually untouched by our afflictions, by our anger, by our self-hatred, or whatever the affliction is. They're actually not touched by it. The actual nature of the mind does not change, and therefore they can be removed. These afflictions can be removed. So the first step, of course, is the wish to do so. But here in this case, being the practice of the universal vehicle, it's not just about doing this for ourselves, it's doing it for the benefit of every sentient being. Which is so hard. We're not used to doing anything other than for ourselves. That's really difficult. That makes Dharma practice so difficult. I think that's one of the most difficult steps towards Dharma practice. That step from focusing just on I, me, and mine towards all other sentient beings. That's why great compassion, which is the mind that actually does that for the first time, it focuses on all sentient beings and wishes them to be free from suffering. Not just what we ordinarily call suffering, but from all samsaric limitations. So far we've only ever wished for ourselves to be free from suffering, and we don't even want to be free from samsara. We love samsara. We're attached to samsara. I've said that last year a lot. It's like we're in a prison, the prison of our own mind. We're imprisoning ourselves. We're limiting ourselves in such a profound way. It's unbelievable, like what our mind can actually do, but we have no inkling that this is possible, like no sense at all, because we've never tried it. So we're like in a prison. The prison walls are the afflictions, and the door's wide open. But we choose to just stay within. We're attached to our little prison. And that attachment is so interesting. I mean, even without using this analogy, even what's ordinarily in a worldly sense called suffering, sometimes we're even attached to that. Right? People are attached to their sickness, they're attached to their problem. Like in a way you want to get rid of it, but in a way that's you, that's your identity. But of course, worse than that is within cyclic existence, we're just so attached to our happiness and everything, to this limited happiness that's really not happiness at all. It's just the absence of something worse. Right? I've given this example many times, but we really need to understand that. When you're really, really hungry, the first bite of food, it's so blissful, right? It feels like that is real happiness. But then every bite, the happiness should grow. But instead, the bliss slowly, gets weaker and weaker, and then it eventually turns into suffering if we don't stop eating. And that is true for anything we think is wonderful right now. We continue doing the same thing. I talked to my friend the other day. She was saying, oh, having a shower is so lovely, right? A hot shower. Yeah, for 5 minutes, 15 minutes. But 10 hours? Right? 10 hours, you look very different to before, I guess, with your skin peeling off and stuff. And forget about the boredom of standing. So the point is, therefore, there's nothing within this existence that is true happiness. Last year I also spoke about, I gave you the analogy, like saying 22 degrees is real warmth. That's what our body should be experiencing. Not like, that's not 22. No, but let's say 22 degree Celsius, not Fahrenheit. What's that in Fahrenheit? 40? I don't know, whatever, no one seems to know anyway. So, okay, so you have the 22 degrees Celsius, and if you previously were in a place that was super cold, then +5 may seem really comfortable and warm, right? After like -50, like if you were just in Russia and spent the winter there, there's some places, I know one nun, she told me, I think in her hometown, it goes down to -40. So then after, a month of -40 +5, you're probably going to get out of your bathing suit, right? You're going to just take off all your clothes. That's our happiness. Because there's, a lot worse sometimes. And so when that cold temperature, that like extreme or cold temperature, which we call ordinarily problems, when they subside, we call it happiness. But from the point of view of an arhat, they would laugh about it. They'd be like, that's cold. right? 22, that's what we're aiming for. So this is just an analogy, of course, but similarly, we have no idea of the kind of happiness we can experience. But we don't, because we never look for it. We never even do anything. I mean, we allow our afflictions to just run wild. Every now and then we control them for a few moments, and then we forget, we grow tired, and we stop doing it. And so we accumulate, of course, we strengthen our afflictions, and in particular, our self-centered mind, the mind that perceives of a self in a way in which it doesn't exist. In other words, it perceives like an inherent intrinsic entity that seems more precious than anyone else. Right? And so we strengthen that mind, we strengthen our root misconception that perceives everything to exist in a very solid way. And no wonder we never move past these +5 degrees. But once we understood the limitations of our existence right now and what we could achieve, it's not enough to then move from there and aim towards liberating ourselves. Let's look around. There's so many sentient beings, so many living beings, and we've depended on them since beginningless time. Now I don't have my phone, I've got it in there, I think. Maybe I forgot it. Anyway, in that there's someone who wrote something really beautiful in the discussion group, like remembering, we talked about like in the past, we've existed since beginningless time. Okay, I'm not going to even get and argue about past and future lives. We've done that many times. But just the fact that our consciousness has always existed. So in different forms, of course. And therefore, we've had any kind of relationship with anyone. Now, of course, we also had negative ones. But someone said really beautifully, it's actually, of course, you can't say that we were not endless times killed by others. It's really hard to know. It's logically, if we've existed since beginning this time, we've had any relationship with anyone. But this person put it in such a beautiful way in the discussion group, like saying, actually, to harm someone it's a lot more difficult. It's so much harder to do that, to harm others. I mean, in the sense, like, to keep it up, one person, like, how exhausting is that? Whereas, like, love and compassion, I mean, to love someone your entire life and do everything for them, people can actually keep up with that, right? Isn't there something like that? There's like this beautiful message kind of saying, I'm not really repeating the words, but the way I understood it was like, I mean, I also talked about this last time, sorry, I'm jumping from one to the next. It's much harder to be angry with someone for a long time than to love someone, because anger is stress. Remember I talked about my neighbor who always fights with my mom's neighbor, actually, where my mom lives, where I usually live when I'm in Germany. So one of her neighbors, she always has a problem with one of the other neighbors. So when my mom and my sister moved there, so previously she was like suing this neighbor and that neighbor, and then my sister moved there, and my sister doesn't take any, beep, right? And right away they were having a problem. But because she was now having a problem with my sister, she was making up with the neighbors, because I guess it was just too tiring to fight with everyone. So it wasn't always like everyone, I was a particular neighbor. And then she moved on, because obviously it's exhausting. And I've noticed this from people who easily get angry with other people. If they're angry with this person, they try to patch things up more with that, right? Or at least it's kind of like a ceasefire. It's not like you're up in arms because now they're busy with someone else, because it's stress. Anger is stressful. Love isn't. Love and compassion are in accordance with reality. Very important. They're in accordance with the way phenomena exist. I'm not talking about I love you, don't leave me love. That's not love from the Buddhist point of view. Love from a Buddhist point of view is the wish for others to be happy. And so that kind of love, it gives us inner peace, it gives us satisfaction. the worry about our own problem disappears because we just focus on the welfare of others. That's why the Buddha talks about it. Not like, oh, love is really good for you, don't like it, well, tough luck, just do it anyway if you want to be a Buddhist. No, it's mainly good for us. The one thing we run after since beginning this time, we want to be happy. That's the way to do it. He's basically saying, wake up. Just being self-centered hasn't served you. I mean, we're still in samsara. We're still suffering. We still can't even benefit ourselves fully. Forget about lasting happiness. You're kidding? I mean, we're running after tiny, short moments the whole time, and we can never sit still because sooner or later we suffer. I also spoke about that last time. Our existence is in the nature of suffering, because if it weren't, you could lie in bed the whole day and be blissful. But you can't, right? You could have a shower 5 hours every day and you'd be happy. Or be totally dirty and be happy. It didn't matter, right? But the problem was we constantly experience new problems, so we have to change the situation. We can never sit still, literally. Including myself, right? We have to move because pain sets in sooner or later. We can never sit still. We have to constantly change to something else, change to something else. That's because our existence is in the nature of suffering, and that suffering comes from our own mind. It comes from self-charity. It comes from the mind that always worries about me and mine. There's always some worry, there's always something missing, and we can never truly enjoy. But then, of course, we should focus also on others, because they undergo the same. They suffer in the same way. And we can't be without others. Others are so important in so many ways. So they've been kind to us in the past, over and over again, right? They've also harmed us, but it doesn't help to focus on the harm, first of all. And secondly, as this person put it so beautifully, I guess if we received harm, it was never as intense as the benefit we received. It was never as, like when we were the child of someone. I mean, if you have children or if you watch other mothers, they put their children before themselves, absolutely. And every sentient being has done that limitless times. We've been their children over and over, and they've done everything for us. They've also been our children, right? If you now have a child, as a nun that's not really helpful, but if you have a child or children, it seems like, wow, there's no greater person in the whole world. Well, everyone is this greatest person because they've all been your child, right? So in the past, there's no stranger. In the past, we've been extremely close to everyone. But not just that, even now, everyone, if it wasn't for others, we wouldn't exist. If it wasn't for our parents, we wouldn't have been born. I mean, we are born from someone, especially as humans. We're so lucky to be human because we have a healthy balance between happiness and suffering. Lucky we have some suffering, because without it, it'd be very difficult to even look in the spiritual direction. I mean, those who always experience so much, like they talk about the celestial realm, but even in the human realm, there are beings who have so much happiness. They're so famous, they're so beautiful, they're so wonderful. I'm not saying they're really happy all the time, but they're definitely not interested in letting all that go and maybe just doing some meditation or something, right? They're not interested. They're so blissed out. They think it's so important. They enjoy so much. So therefore, it's good to have some suffering. And usually, yeah, it's actually really good to have suffering. Because otherwise, I mean, even when you're a Buddhist practitioner, oftentimes it's like, yeah, practice tomorrow. And then suddenly you go to the doctor and they tell you, you have a weird growth. And suddenly it's like, the Dharma, I have to practice. I may be dying, right? I'm exaggerating a little bit, but I know some people who actually got a false diagnosis. And suddenly they wanted to meditate, it wasn't even real. And of course there are others who suddenly become, have get a terminal diagnosis, like I don't know, have terminal cancer or something, and suddenly everything else, the fights with their neighbors, how much money they have, whether they have 2 cars or not, it doesn't matter. It's not important at all. When death is approaching, suddenly all these things no longer, they don't make sense, right? And now they're interested in something else. They're more interested in their own mind. Well, guess what? We're all moving towards our own death. We just ignore it. I mean, this could be our last day. We don't know. Is it, what comes first, tomorrow or next life? Right? Actually, it doesn't make sense we act the way we do. But it's very easy for us right now. There's no obvious disease or whatever, or we don't, we just choose not to think about it. But when we do, when it's in our face, suddenly we start practicing. So therefore, we're born human, we're lucky to be born human, where we face problems sometimes that wake us up from our comfortable kind of life where everything seems to be the same and it'll always go on like that. And there are other human beings we need for that. I mean, we need to stay alive. If it wasn't, food and drink and all that, and then, of course, education, everything we learned is from others. So for our own happiness, others are equally important, just as we are. So anyway, there are different meditations, and I mentioned the meditations last time already. So this was like a short kind of summary of these 2 techniques, going back in time, reflecting on the fact that everyone has been so extremely close to us, has been our mother, but has been everything else as well, and remembering how kind they were to us. But also even right now, how others are so important, even on a spiritual level. Love and compassion. If there's no one to love, how can you develop love and compassion? Generosity, patience. You need obnoxious people, right? It's very hard to practice patience with a bodhisattva. They're kind, they're usually, not very complicated, unless they manifest in an obnoxious way to give us the opportunity to practice patience. So the point is, therefore, even the difficult people, even those who require our help, like our generosity and so forth, the poor people, all of them give us the opportunity to practice. The nice people, of course, they also may encourage us, may give us support, but even the obnoxious ones, right? The ones we try to avoid, even more than they're actually make it more difficult for us actually to train our mind. So we hear stories like Atisha, the great Dipamkara Atisha, the great Indian master who traveled to Tibet, who's said to have taken this person who was making his tea with him. He was so difficult and so abusive towards Atisha. And so Atisha said, I have to take him with me. And his other assistants, attendants said, don't take him, he's so difficult. And he's like, yes, exactly. He gives me the opportunity to practice patience. He was this hotshot Lama, right? Everyone was very respectful towards him. So he felt he needed the opportunity to be around someone who's very critical, very, difficult. So if you have anyone, you're really lucky. Keep them close. I mean, of course, it doesn't feel that way, but think, how do we practice patience? And that's such an important quality. We don't need to talk about the Dharma. I mean, when we talk about a person we really like, and they're really patient, that's one quality we definitely mention. Oh, they're so patient. So that's definitely just on a universal level without talking about Buddhism. It's such a beautiful quality. So how do you develop patience unless you've got a few obnoxious people around? This is not theory. This is practice. Yeah? And be lucky if you've got some. Right? Keep them close. And maybe you're lucky to have more than one. Right? And so therefore, they give us these incredible opportunities. Every sentient being does. Without them, we couldn't develop our mind. So amazing. Yes, we're important, but so are they. Every single one of them is important. And because there are so many, right, in terms of numbers, they're more important. If there was just one other sentient being, we could say, yeah, we're equally important. But right now, we've just been me, my mind, my happiness, my well-being, right? And see where it got us. Nowhere. Still stuck. Still stuck. So, I mean, at some point it's enough. Enough is enough. Right? I mean, it's hard work, but it's even harder to stay in this existence. I mean, it's even harder to stay in samsara. So it's okay, it's not easy. It requires us to be disciplined and watch our mind. The first thing is mindfulness, of course. But mindfulness, the way it is used in the West, actually refers to 3 mental functions. 3 mental functions need to be at work when we talk about mindfulness. The first one is alertness, or heedfulness, as it's sometimes called. Heedfulness, that's such a weird word, but anyway, never mind. Vigilance or alertness, attentiveness. Our mind needs to be really attentive. We need to work on our attentiveness. Because sometimes we just do our thing and we don't even remember what we just did, right? We just daydream and like, an hour's passed, not even aware. So we need that alertness. But what we also need is introspection, or as a more modern term that is used nowadays, meta-awareness. First I wasn't too happy with the term, but I got used to it. Meta-awareness. Meta is a Greek word. It can mean beyond, but it doesn't mean beyond. It means basically here itself. So meta-discussion is discussion about discussion. Or meta-awareness is to become aware of our own awareness, of our own mind. To become aware, because everything we experience comes from our own mind. Everything we experience comes from our own mind. So this is what this text is all about, understanding there's no objective reality. There isn't. There is reality, but what we call reality in general is the sum of our subjective, of each individual's subjective reality. That's reality. There is no objective reality. I mean, we believe there is, we think there is, but what would that be? There's what I perceive, there's what you perceive, and that's obviously different. Even right now, and we're in the same room, well, all day long we have different experiences. Of course, you're in your place, I'm in my place, so when we're not together, it's quite obvious that we have very different experiences. But even within this room, together here, we're sitting in a different place, different distance from what we're looking at. I see something you've never seen, you see something I've never seen. Your face. A photograph is not your face, in case you're about to argue. Right? So I see your face, you see mine. I've never seen my own face, I've only seen photographs and stuff. And so did you. So I see something that you've never seen, and you see something I've never seen. So, right? In that sense, therefore, it's totally subjective. That's the essence of Buddhism. It comes down to, that's what we call emptiness, basically. Well, it's not just that, but it goes in that direction. So it all comes from our mind, from our mental consciousness. Everything comes from our mind. Everything. Who we are comes from our mind. Right? I mean, when we fall in love with someone, yeah, maybe a little bit the external, but sooner or later it's the mental consciousness. If they're a jerk, they can look like, I don't know, Brad Pitt or whoever. Well, he's kind of old now, but, whoever else. Right? Can look, like Mr. Universe. If they're a jerk, we may like to look at them from afar, but we certainly don't want to spend time with them. Right? The mental consciousness, that's what determines who someone is. It's mainly that. And everything comes from the mental consciousness. The sense consciousnesses, of course, enable us to see color and shapes and so forth, but it's mainly the mental consciousness that is responsible for our reality. Everything comes from the mind. The thoughts you have, good or bad, problem or challenge, totally dependent on your own mind. Yeah, whichever. But stress, I don't believe stress is actually external. It's an interpretation. Right? Oh, I'm really being challenged here. Oh, I have to work really hard. Amazing. Oh, great. Get a little bit more. Are you stressed? No. Oh, it's so much work. Oh, I'm so tired. Oh, gosh, I can't. Like that's stress. If you have these thoughts, yeah, it's basically how we react to it. How we react to it. Oh, this jerk. Ugh, it's so stressful just seeing them. Can't bear their sight. Or, wow, giving me the opportunity to practice patience. Thank you, I'm so grateful. Same situation, same guy, same woman, whatever. Someone challenging us. And it's totally up to us what we do with it. Isn't that an incredible freedom? What a freedom. But we can't use that freedom. Because we're not even aware of what our mind is doing. Right? We can't control it. Right now it's just doing its thing. That's why. The first step is alertness and focusing, what is my mind doing? So that's meta-awareness or introspection. Being alert and looking inward. So have that alert. So don't just allow yourself to be daydreaming and just being, carried off. No. Being alert, attentive, but alert and attentive of what? Of my own mental consciousness. What are the thoughts? What is my mind suggesting? What reality is it conjuring up right now? And then you need what's called mindfulness. It's actually the Tibetan word. Mindfulness means remembering. Remember to be alert and to focus on your own mind. That's remembrance, so recollection. So the Tibetan word mindfulness actually literally means to remember. Therefore, be vigilant of your own mind and remember doing that. So even with talking with people, talk, listen to what they're saying, but like a little spy, keep watching your own mind. What am I thinking? Am I having negative thoughts towards that person? Do I want them to just like me and think I'm wonderful? Or am I also concerned with their happiness and so forth? That is the first step, and it's the foundation of everything. Without that, Buddhist practice won't work. And then we start with our own afflictions and so forth. So this is what we need to do in the beginning. This is very much, we're going to be really busy. We'll have our hands full with that practice. But we can at the same time also go through this here. That's why we're learning this. Okay, to learn about, for instance, enlightenment. What does that mean? The absence of all obscurations. Okay, I can have a sense of what that means. Have a sense of that incredible love, compassion. So let's learn about it in order then to also slowly start with that. Our main practice is still focusing on our mind, watching out with these afflictions, right? When there's anger, focus on the anger. What happens? Anger can no longer function. It's as simple as that, actually. But you can even avoid anger by, of course, meditating, taking some time to meditate on the disadvantages of anger, hostility, resentment, and so forth. You can actually avoid the arisal of anger. But usually it's just when it arises, you can just focus on that, just watch it with like a gentle attentiveness, and then usually it disappears. Any affliction disappears because it's always focused on something else, unless you're angry with your own anger. Then you focus on whatever. Focus on the breath. All right, so that's the foundation. But without letting that slide, or without forgetting about everything else, well, let's also aim for the Bodhisattva path. Right now it's fake, but it's so important to just, I don't want to say pretend, not so much because it has a negative connotation, but to practice as if we were bodhisattvas. There's no problem doing that. When you do any Buddhist practice, what do? Taking refuge and generating bodhicitta. That's what we did in the very beginning. Come on, it was maybe some of you have real bodhicitta, but in my case, it's totally fake. right? But I still do it because it's training. I'm training my mind. I'm accustoming, I'm familiarizing my mind with this, right? And you do it again and again and again and again and again and again. Your mind gets used to it. I mean, everything we do. Remember I told you this Tibetan saying, all activities are imitations, right? So imitation basically means, that's this Tibetan proverb, the first line of this proverb. So really, like, we're just imitating others. In the beginning, we're just imitating others until we familiarize ourselves to such a degree that it comes natural. Yeah, so when it says all activities are imitation, it means like that's where it came from. Now, for instance, when we were born, we didn't have the desire to brush our teeth, right? It was not like, Mom, where's my toothbrush, right? No, it was actually difficult to get used to. Our parents had to insist on brushing our teeth. So it was really difficult. I had a really hard time to do that. I would scrub it over the sink rather than in just though my parents thought I was heard like a scrubbing sound. I hated it. I hated having to bath. Didn't like that. I don't know why, but I just didn't like it. Bath and brushing my teeth were really like my least favorite. And now, really, I remember as like a 5-6-year-old one, I had to be forced. And so now it's like, without it, I can't, like going to bed, waking up without it. So I remember a time when it was the opposite and I got used to it. So it's just like that. Just like that. It's good for you brushing your teeth, by the way, right? It's not like a silly habit. No, it's good for you. You do it twice a day. Taking refuge in the morning, generating bodhicitta in the morning and the evening. Well, if you keep doing that and you do it, with your entire heart, it's not just like looking at the toothbrush, right? You're actually moving it in your mouth. It's the real deal. So likewise here, reciting the prayer, it's not like just reciting the words. That's like looking at your toothbrush, right? Maybe even putting some toothpaste on it and just looking at it. Yeah. But when you recite the prayer and you try to really feel it, then you're adding to that. And one day it'll come. No way it won't come. So it's just a matter of doing it again and again and again and again and again. Don't wait until like you've got the basis. You're ever mindful. No. You can wait for a long time. Because that degree of mindfulness that we're aiming for only comes when you're highly advanced. Right? So that's why we need to do everything in the beginning, basically. Focus mainly on our mindfulness and so forth. But be aware the degree of mindfulness we're aiming for is only possible when you're really advanced. Right? So let's do everything right from the beginning. Let's do the whole thing. Yeah? That's what we do in school as well. You want to become a professor of physics, right? You want to eventually become a professor of physics. You have to learn everything. You learn everything right from the beginning, right? Everything. Because you have to know everything. You're not just a professor of physics. You need to know how to read and write. You need to know, what else? You need to know mathematics. It helps to know biology, So likewise here, we're doing everything right from the beginning. With the focus on certain things. That's why we learn this. Okay, that was a long introduction to get you to learn this. Okay. So, there are two methods to first, in order to generate, of course, this closeness towards all sentient beings, because we're aiming for Buddhahood. We're not shortchanging ourselves. We can aim for self-liberation, but might as well aim for the highest. And anyway, we live in the 21st century. We always aim for the best. So that's a good time to aim for the best, but for the benefit of all sentient beings. So, focusing on the past, focusing on what's going on right now, our interaction with other people, we now, having understood every sentient being has been extremely close and extremely kind to us, and having understood that we need everyone is just equally important, we are now generating a closeness towards all sentient beings. And once we have generated that closeness, we want them to be free from suffering. We want them to be free from any kind of limitation. That's the wish. The first step, to wish that. And then we ourselves want to contribute to that. That's great compassion. So, closeness, that closeness is affectionate love. Then the wish for them to be free from anything that is not in the nature of their mind. Just as I want to be free from that. Right? Having understood the limitations we're undergoing. That's also one of the steps that I mentioned before. No need to mention this again, but we spoke about it last time. So the time before that. So the point is, I see the limitations of samsara. I want to get rid of samsara. I've got enough. And now I want for others the same. And I want to help others. Not just to wish it for them and then someone else doing the job. No, I want to do it. I personally want to do it. I want to do it, and I take personal responsibility. So first I just wish to do that. I wish to protect them, and then I develop the resolve. I will do it. Come high or low, I will do my very best to help other sentient beings to remove what's not in the nature of their mind. It's not supposed to be there. And how can I do that? That's the next step, if I become a Buddha. If I become a Buddha, although I can't take their problems, I can only change my own mind. I cannot change anyone else's mental consciousness, but I can show them how to do it. I can show them how to do it. That's the only way. Whether they do it or not, that's still up to them. Unfortunately, can't force anyone. But at the very least, the best I can do from my own side is to show them how to get there. And I can only do that if I get there myself first. Right? If I pull myself out of the what's it called? The swamp. If I pull myself out of the swamp, not only do I now have the freedom to move around, and do my thing, because I'm out of that thing, but I also know how to get out of it. Yeah? So pulling myself out of the swamp is like becoming a Buddha, in order to pull everyone else out. And that's bodhicitta. Right? That's it. I'm using the example of a swamp, but really that's getting rid of what's not in the nature of our own mind, wanting to get rid of that, wanting to finally use our mind. I wonder when in modern science they talk about you just use 10% of your brain, which is really not what you're doing. I mean, you're using the whole brain. But I guess the capacity of the brain is so much greater. You could use all parts in a more intense way. Well, yeah, no surprise we don't use all the parts in the greatest way, because we don't use our mind in that way, right? So actually, what comes first, the mind or the brain? Does the mind change the brain, or the brain change the mind? Which is the dominant one? When you meditate, does the mind meditate and then change the brain? Or does the brain meditate first and then the mind starts meditating? It's the mind meditating, isn't it? It's not like you're injecting your brain with something and then suddenly you start meditating. It doesn't work that way, right? It's mind over brain. Those two are not the same. The mind, we label mind the experiencing entity. And then of course there's the brain, and they're very strongly connected. But when you learn for an exam, you use the mind first. You use the mind. And then the mind creates new connections in the brain, which is why you can remember the next day. Right? Just clarification or question?
It's just about mind before brain.
Mind over brain.
Mind over brain. Wouldn't that mean that animals might start meditating, just they cannot keep it up?
Well, the thing is, mind over brain doesn't mean the two are not extremely dependent on each other. I'm not saying that our mind exists independent of the brain and can now do all sorts of stuff. In some cases, yes. In some cases, that's possible. I remember I talked about this in the past, maybe not to you, but there has been just a short explanation of what's called the Nuns Project. It's a project in the US of Christian nuns. There was a Christian order, and these nuns were really socially still around. I forget the name of the order now. But they are very socially active and practice compassion and action. They're really amazing nuns. And what some scientists, some neuroscientists noticed was that they live really long life and they stay sharp, sharp as a, what do you call it? Sharp as a, what is it? Razor sharp. Oh, okay. Yeah. Never mind. So razor sharp. Yeah, their mind is really sharp. Yeah. So their mind is sharp. They're really compassionate. And so one of the abbess of this order at the time when they were first approached by some neuroscientists, she was just like them, like really bright and, active and everything. She was like way into her 90s and was still teaching and doing stuff. So this neuroscientist asked her if she would donate her brain. And she's like, sure. And she donated her brain after she passed away. So did some of her sisters, some of her colleagues, they also did. And what these neuroscientists found was that many of them had a brain of an Alzheimer person. Yes, they had, the brain was eaten up, whatever are the symptoms, the protein or whatever. Many of them should have had Alzheimer. But, it wasn't like after they were 60, they were sitting at home watching TV, maybe did a little bit, some travel, and that was the end of it. So just having your brain control your mind in that sense. No, they actively used their mind in such a way that these symptoms didn't come through. Right? So what I'm saying is ordinarily we have a human mind and we are limited by the brain we have. That is definitely true. But we can work to go beyond that. We just don't do it. There are a lot of great masters. There are amazing things that they can do. They may just have an ordinary brain that they were born with. But of course, we don't know. Of course, it changed over time. The mind changes. But I'm pretty sure if you look at their brain, in the end, it looks like a normal brain, but they've gone beyond that. Yeah. So the point is we have the potential to go beyond it. If we use it in a special way, then even if the brain, is affected by some disease, it may not necessarily be obvious. And there's another beautiful example I give you. I've forgotten about Noah. Gosh, I forgot about Noah. You remember Noah? That little boy? There was a boy from England once. He's now adult. It must be adult now. It was actually Aiden who came up with that. I remember it was someone in the class called Aiden. He gave me this example of this British boy. When he was in the womb, when he was in his mother's womb, some fluid from his spine went all the way to his brain and destroyed his brain. It's destroyed. There was this potent fluid. There was already a problem. He was paralyzed. He was in the womb, but the doctors knew he was going to be paralyzed. But that's besides the point. This fluid from his spine went into his brain and destroyed his brain. So the doctors asked his parents, well, do you want to abort this child? Because it's not going to be viable. This boy is not going to survive. He doesn't have a brain. He only has the external. So they did some scans and you could see it was totally black. Only a little bit of brain left around the skull. And the parents were like, no, we don't want that. We want, they were, I guess, religious. I don't know what their reasons were. They said, we want to give it a chance. We want to give this boy a chance. So they gave birth to this boy and the scan kept showing there's no brain. Okay, just this little bit at the side. But they treated him just like any other baby. And, it was in the beginning, it was just like a baby. Okay, babies can do. They can scream and pee and, sleep. That's pretty much what they do, right? I'm a fan, but still, that's what they do, basically, right? They're cute and everything. But, so that's what he did. But then as he grew older, they exposed him to different shapes and colors, whatever you do, like these little games they do. And they did that. And the boy learned. He kept learning. So they just didn't give up. They just kept exposing him to these different, games, like learning games. And slowly he started to speak. And at the age of 3, they did a brain scan. And there was brain. The brain had grown. Now there was a brain. So it was previously not there. You can see the scans. You can look him up. I know his first name is Noah, the boy without a brain. There's like a documentary about him. You can look him up. So there's definitely no brain. But slowly it grew because the mind was active. So the mind was responsible for the growth of the brain. Does that always happen? No, there are many causes and conditions. I mean, this child was young enough and It's not always possible if you lose. Some people have, because there's karma as well, of course. Some people have accidents, parts of their brain are no longer functioning, other parts of the brain take over. Sometimes it happens, sometimes it doesn't. But it shows mind over body. All right, so having said this, now going back to this here, generating bodhicitta, therefore, generating that mind, changing the brain in that way. We can all do that. We just have to do it right from the beginning. Don't waste time. Just do it. Be brave. Be bold. Really, be bold. Don't be timid. Oh, I'm so great bodhisattva. No, you're not. But, right? Yeah. It's not about not being humble. There's a difference between humility. Yeah, I know I'm not bodhisattva, but just pretend I am. I mean, no, I don't, not in that way. No, but I mean, I just do these practices, I just do them and try to bring in as much emotion as I can. Remember last time I said, don't make your practice turn into a routine. When you take refuge, take refuge and generate bodhicitta, do it as if you did it for the first time. Like newly, you want to do it right with all your entire being, right? It's like when you drive a car for the first time, you're totally focused on everything. You're giving your everything. That's how we should do it when we do our practice, as if we did it for the first time. Generate what in the Zen tradition is called a beginner's mind. As if you were doing it for the first time with the same gust, with the same attention and so forth. Not like, that one again, kind of like daydreaming as you're doing it, right? Yeah, then of course, that's like looking at a toothbrush without brushing your teeth. It's a bit like that, right? Okay. Anyway, having said all this, now you enter the bodhisattva path. Now you enter the bodhisattva. Once you have bodhicitta, that is spontaneous. That now, after everything I said, so I skipped a few steps, but never mind. I mean, I didn't go into all the details, but you really wish for all sentient beings to take them to that enlightened state. You yourself will do it. You're determined to do it. And once that mind is natural, it pops up without making an effort, again and again. This mind of enlightenment, you're a bodhisattva. Right? You're familiarized to such a degree, you did all the work, you were attentive, mindfulness and all that. We can all do it, every single one of you. All of us can do it. Every Buddha of the past has done exactly like where we are right now. But decided one day, I'm just going to do it. I may be busy, but the mind is ever present. I can do anything else and still practice. No excuses. All right, so then you enter the path of accumulation of the universal vehicle. Sorry, that was a long introduction. But I wanted to get you to the emotional state, not just dry stuff here. The emotional, you need to feel it, you need to want it. That's the way to study this stuff. So, you enter now the universal vehicle, the path of accumulation. What is the etymology? Path of accumulation? Well, bodhisattvas, you bodhisattvas, who've entered this path must accumulate sufficient merit and wisdom. You now need to accumulate positive potential. It's kind of like saving money. If you have a lot of money on your bank, there's a lot you can do with it, right? Money is a good analogy. When we say accumulate, we talk about accumulating. It seems so weird, like accumulate. Accumulate is a word that usually implies something physical. Collect stamps, accumulate cups or whatever, right? Accumulate a lot of money, accumulate a lot of friends. It seems like something physical, but here it's mental and it's a positive potential, for a lack of a better word. Positive karmic imprints. It's kind of like Positive imprints in the sense that all these positive actions leave karmic seeds and they enable you to do the things you want to do. You want to practice the Dharma? You won't face hundreds of obstacles. Can't find a room, can't find a teacher, can't find and this list is endlessly long. So, or you have to, I don't know, you don't have the freedom every day to at least, think about the Dharma to some degree. I mean, if you have a job that is so demanding and you come home and you just have dead, very difficult to practice, right? You need a little bit of like mental space. Yeah, some mental space. So anyway, this positive potential by accumulating a lot of merit, by engaging in a lot of virtuous actions, it's like you have enough money in the bank, you can do whatever you want. Except the money here is positive potential, the bank is your mind, and now you can practice the way you want to. But you need to also accumulate not just virtue, you need to also accumulate wisdom, merit and wisdom. So virtue as in like merit, those are the actions of love and compassion and generosity. Practice these as much as we can. That leaves positive imprints in our mind. On top of that, understanding, wisdom. These we need to practice. That gives more freedom to our mind. Our mind, you can do the things that previously you couldn't do. Yeah, that's very important. So you accumulate merit on that first stage. That's where the focus is on. So you need to accumulate enough merit and wisdom to advance through the subsequent path and ultimately attain the enlightened state of a Buddha, of course. But every practitioner, you have to also, as practitioner, you also have to accumulate merit and wisdom on the later path of preparation, path of seeing. So why call it that here? Right? You may wonder etymologically. Usually the names are explained. So here, why call it that? Well, yet since practitioners also accumulate merit and wisdom on the later path, this explanation alone does not adequately define the path of accumulation, that first level. Rather, the term denotes the first of the four learner paths: accumulation, preparation, seeing, meditation. Okay, where the emphasis is on amassing merit and wisdom in order to attain the path of seeing. On this level, you focus on reaching the path of seeing, understanding emptiness, realizing emptiness directly, experiencing emptiness, experiencing the ultimate nature of all phenomena directly. Why do I want to do that? Because the root cause of all my trouble is perceiving the opposite of emptiness. That's why we're in trouble. We perceive ourselves and everything else as existing intrinsically, as existing objectively, as existing over there. Like, this table has nothing to do with my mind. There's just a table already and I just happen to see it. I call it a table because in and of itself it is a table. Nothing to do with my mind calling it that. No, I'm calling it because it independently exists as this table. While it's actually the other way around. It's only a table because I call it that. Because I call it a table, right? Likewise with the I, most importantly. Everything revolves around me. Everything, my whole existence revolves around me. But this me, this I that I perceive, doesn't exist. There's an I that exists, but I have no idea of that one, that I don't perceive. I perceive something very concrete, like something inherently there. It's the owner of my mind and body, not just labeled by my own mind. No, it's there, and it's important. Excuse me, very important. So therefore, this misperception of reality gives rise to all the other emotions, all the other afflictive states. I can't help it. I can't help it. Honestly, it's not your fault you're self-centered. It's not my fault I'm self-centered. Once you have that root misconception, it's natural. Once you have this root misconception, you can't do anything but you'll have self-centeredness. It's that root misconception, that root ignorance we have that is responsible for our self-obsession. So we're not criticizing that self-obsession. We're trying to reduce it because it gives us so much difficulties, it gives us so much pain, it gives us so much trouble. But the main focus is eventually on eliminating that root misconception, because without it, self-centeredness, can be controlled to some degree, but there's great danger it can grow stronger again. So it's just damage control, what we do in the beginning, trying to reduce the afflictions. That's when we start. But we have to do that. We have to do that. Damage control. That's really what it is. Initially, that's our focus. But let's not lose sight of what we're aiming for. Damage control is okay, but it's not safe. We want to remove the root cause. And that is our root misconception. That's why we have to realize emptiness. Emptiness is just another way of saying the lack of phenomena existing intrinsically, objectively, the way they appear to us. This we need to understand. And when we understand it, then we can slowly start to remove the mind that holds on to the opposite. Makes sense, right? You perceive the opposite of that, then you realize, oh, phenomena don't exist inherently. Then slowly you can remove that mind. Only slowly, because it's so deeply ingrained. We've had it for so long, you can't easily just get rid of it. So we need to realize emptiness directly at some point. We can first know it intellectually, just conceptually, but that's not enough. You need to directly experience it, and that's what you do on the path of seeing. That's why on the path of accumulation, you're going in the right direction. You're moving in the right, in the direction of eliminating the afflictions, but you can only do so once you realize emptiness directly. Then you can actually, it's no longer damage control, you're actually removing them for good. The coarser ones first, and then slowly the subtler ones. So you see, that's why it's so important to realize emptiness directly. And that's why the path of accumulation is accumulating the momentum. It's accumulating the causes and conditions, so all the merit and wisdoms, so that slowly we can start getting prepared, which is the second level, the path of preparation. Does that make sense? Okay. So where the emphasis is on amassing merit and wisdom in order to attain the path of seeing, when emptiness is directly realized. Just as great compassion, the conceptual realization of emptiness that is sustained by great compassion, and bodhicitta, in its contrived form, play a crucial role for practitioners of sharp faculties before they reach the path of accumulation, serving as causes for bodhicitta, and thus for the entry of the path of universal vehicle. These three factors. Okay, what did I just say here? Well, this is going back to what we learned before. Basically, before you become a bodhisattva, you needed these three factors. I'm just reminding you. So you needed these three factors. Before you were a bodhisattva, you needed great compassion. Everyone agrees with that, right? Great compassion. You needed contrived bodhicitta. In the past, we talked a lot about contrived bodhicitta. Uncontrived bodhicitta is actual bodhicitta. I want to become enlightened for the welfare of all sentient beings. That spontaneous mind that spontaneously pops up. Once it's spontaneous, it's called actual bodhicitta. But actual bodhicitta, this uncontrived spontaneous mind, is preceded by contrived bodhicitta. Right? It's like brushing your teeth. Now it's spontaneous. But there was a time when you still had to remind yourself, I hate the dentist. Right? So you did it because you just didn't want to, have rotten teeth. So similarly, with bodhicitta, there's a contrived version that precedes us being a bodhisattva. This is what Chandrakirti talks about. At the very beginning, we talked about this as well. The three causes. You need to have an understanding of emptiness, right? Because here we're talking about choosing the path of sharper faculty. It's better to realize emptiness before generating bodhicitta. Once you realize emptiness, you're more likely to understand that enlightenment is possible. Right? Why are you more likely? Because you know the afflictions that come from our root misconception, they can be removed because emptiness exists. If emptiness exists, then that which gives rise to our anger, the mind that perceives the opposite of emptiness, it can be removed. Right? Just take the example that I usually give. Somehow it's always here on this side. Oh yeah, to something, there was a cupboard on that side. That's right. When I talked about this into something, I talked about realizing emptiness is like giving you a day-to-day kind of analogy. A monster in the closet, a monster in the cupboard, right? I mean, believing in inherent existence is about believing in something that is impossible, which means we're adding something to what's actually there. We're not denying the existence of something, we're actually making the I and other phenomena more concrete than they actually are. So we add a characteristic onto things, intrinsic existence. When in actuality, they don't exist intrinsically, independently, objectively. They exist, but not in that extreme way. So that extreme way in which we see phenomena is like believing there's a monster in a closet, right? We're adding something. To the closet, we add a monster. And then there's fear, right? There's fear, there's worry, and so forth. Certain emotional states arise. So I know my fear comes from perceiving the monster in the closet. But I think it's justified because I believe there is a monster inside. Right now, I believe there is this inherent I. So of course I get angry and, I'm attached to it. But then I can choose, of course, for the time being, I take a sleeping pill. If it doesn't allow me to sleep, I can numb that fear and so forth. But the best solution is to check. Is there a monster in the closet or not? And I look inside, nothing there. There's nothing there. And then I understand, all that fear, unnecessary. All the fear's gone. Since it comes from the mind that perceives the monster in the closet, so when it's no longer there, it's gone. I like a more modern example. You know how attachment and anger sometimes comes from us actually imagining someone to be there who's not there. So imagine, I give you another example. You're chatting with someone online, this beautiful woman or beautiful man, and you fall head over heel in love with that person. They're in a bikini or I don't know, whatever, male or female, whatever, you just make the adjustments, right? Maybe beautiful body or beautiful mind, beautiful body, female or mind, whatever. And they're talking to you and they're so sweet and they're lovely and have a great car and a great house. And, the whole family looks so nice and it's just so wonderful. And you're totally with all this attachment there. So this is on the positive, yeah, right? Taking it from a positive side. It's all so wonderful. And then one day you realize it was just an AI. There was no one there. What happens to your attachment? It lingers, maybe a little bit, right? You're so used to it. But there was never a person. This person, there was photographs of other people, right? Or maybe generated by an AI. What happens to the attachment? It's gone. That, I think, is a good example when you realize, here we're not realizing the I doesn't exist. It's not about that. But we don't need to realize that. We need to realize the I that we perceive, the inherently existent I, that doesn't exist. And when that is gone, there's nothing to be attached to. There's nothing to worry about. It's impossible. Am I making sense? So here's looking into the closet, that which gave us such pain and such worry, and there's this, here in this case it's pain, it's fear and worry. Just look inside, and if you don't find it, I can get rid of this fear. Right? Or with the attachment to this person. It's in the beginning there's because of our habit. When you're in love with someone online, right? I guess they will linger a little bit, that attachment. For years you've been chatting to them. For years. Let's say you've never met them. Possible, right? You were happy to leave it the way it is. Maybe you were married and, just having an affair with this whatever. I'm just putting it out there, but it's possible, right? That's possible, especially at this day and age. I heard that some Japanese, they can marry an AI. I listened to a podcast about that. I was like, what? They actually know it's not real, and they get married to this. But never mind, we don't need to go into it. But the point is, like, in this case, you really don't know they don't exist. You're not like that AI savvy, what's the word? Like, you're not that AI kind of familiar with it, and you're totally fooled to think there's this wonderful, understanding person who understands all your problems. He's always there for you, always there to give you a kind word. You know, you fall asleep with them in the. I mean, it's just virtual, but still, like last thing is like, sleep well, I think of you, you know, and you feel so loved and so happy, and you're so attached to them now. If they say, oh, I just went out with this other, I was just chatting with this other person, you're like, not comfortable. So the point is, like, once you understand this person doesn't exist, the attachment will linger, won't it? It won't go away right away. For some it will, but usually if you did it for many, many years, there are imprints. The habit is still there. But you know it's possible you can get rid of it. You know that's similar here. Right? These analogies, they all work. Whether it's the ghost, or no, what's it? The monster in the closet, or the AI, the fake, or like, I don't know, an overweight guy who's like 80 years old pretending to be this beautiful man or woman. I mean, it's the same thing. I mean, it's happened before. It doesn't even have to be an AI. It could just be someone too pretending. I mean, you know, say nice things, but no way you'd be attached to them, you know, their age and everything. Okay, so hopefully that makes sense. Therefore, we need to realize emptiness directly at some point, but even before generating great compassion and bodhicitta, it's great to understand emptiness, because that allows us to understand it's possible to remove my own afflictions, and so to remove others. Now you know. So these were previously, when you started practicing great compassion, contrite bodhicitta, and the realization of emptiness, those you needed previously. Now you continue to practice them. Now it's uncontrite bodhicitta, but still wishing for sentient beings to be free from suffering. You continue to practice realization of emptiness, and you continue to practice bodhicitta, great compassion, all of them. Those are the three main practices. His Holiness usually summarizes them or talks about just two, bodhicitta and emptiness. Right? He talks about these two, but really bodhicitta or great compassion is contained within bodhicitta. Therefore, talking about bodhicitta is really talking about great compassion as well. So, now these three factors remain therefore equally important. First, you generated them before you became a bodhisattva. Now you continue to practice them. This is because bodhisattvas on the path of accumulation and preparation continue to strengthen great compassion and bodhicitta while enhancing their conceptual realization of emptiness. Okay, so now you're on the path of accumulation, but there are three stages of it, three levels, okay, that we usually study about. They're not that difficult to understand. So the first you enter the small path of accumulation. You are now this bodhisattva. Really feel it. Don't allow this to just be intellectual. Think like you now really want to become enlightened for the benefit of all sentient beings. You've reached that state. You've got so much love and compassion for other sentient beings, you can't bear it a single second. You can't bear the thought that you don't do something for them. So you're ready to work towards becoming a Buddha for their benefit. Just imagine, we can all imagine that. We can imagine to be a unicorn, so we can also imagine to be that. Okay, so the first moment of a practitioner's bodhicitta marks the first moment of the small path of accumulation. So for the first time, you have that spontaneous mind. And with it, you've now achieved that first moment of bodhicitta is called the Mahayana path, or the universal path of the universal vehicle. So you enter, therefore, the universal vehicle, you become a bodhisattva. This initial awakening mind is called aspirational bodhicitta. It's called aspirational bodhicitta. So there's actually different ways to distinguish between bodhicitta, many different types. One important distinction is aspirational bodhicitta and engaging bodhicitta. Very easy difference. Aspiration bodhicitta is bodhicitta, the way I just described it, in the continuum of someone who has not yet taken the bodhisattva vow. There's something called the bodhisattva vow, which consists of 18 root vows and 46 secondary vows. You're actually taking a vow. So you may wonder, why do I have to take a vow? Psychologically, it's just helpful. It's like, you don't have to get married. You can just be with someone your entire life. But some people choose to get married because psychologically, it seems like it's like a special commitment. If you take a vow, especially since our mind is weak, if we make that commitment to marry someone, it's almost like a promise, like until the day we die. You do take that vow, actually, depending on which country you're from. Some people write their own vows, but usually it involves, yes, I'll stay with you my whole life, in good times and in bad times and the whole thing. So by just taking that vow, you're psychologically just more likely to keep it. Versus, I never made that promise, so I meet someone else and, well, never mind. So you're more likely maybe to leave them. So it just helps psychologically. Similarly here, the idea is, of course, to keep these vows anyway. But it is said that it gives the mind like a special kind of drive to keep these vows and really to work harder. That's what they say. It makes a difference. So, therefore, engaging bodhicitta, by contrast, is the awakening mind in the continuum of someone who, after generating bodhicitta, first it's aspirational bodhicitta, has then taken the vow. So first you just generate this mind without having taken the vow, or without having received the vow, and then once you're like ready to do it, you also take the vow. Never to give up bodhicitta, for instance, is one of the vows. And then to what are other vows? For instance, to practice generosity, to not get upset, or, of course, you're trying to keep these vows to the best of your ability. So this step marks the transition from merely aspiring to enlightenment to actively committing to the practices of a bodhisattva. Okay? All right. So that's how we distinguish. Of the three levels of the path of accumulation, aspirational bodhicitta is said to exist only on the initial or small level, because by the middling level, bodhisattvas will have taken the vow, the bodhisattva vow, at which point aspirational bodhicitta becomes engaging bodhicitta. Okay? So you will, sooner or later, at the latest on the middling level. So aspirational bodhicitta is said to exist only in the very beginning, because sooner or later you'll receive the vow, you'll take the vow. Yet since the vow can be taken, I use the singular on purpose. There's a little footnote that I don't need to go through. That's why, although it consists of these different vows, 18 root vows and 46 secondary vows, it's very helpful to use the singular. Well, I can tell you why. If you break what is the most important vow of these 18 root vows and 46 vows? There's one root vow, which is giving up bodhicitta. Okay? If you give up bodhicitta, you break the vow. You have no longer the bodhisattva vow. But you still have the other ones in your continuum. So if you still have the other ones and they're called bodhisattva vows, then you're still left with 17 root vows and 46 secondary ones. But actually you don't have the bodhisattva vow. Right? So I use the singular, I say bodhisattva vow, because there are many vows, if I said each one of them were a bodhisattva vow, then after breaking the most important one, you would still have the bodhisattva vows in your continuum, because you have the remaining ones. Does that make sense? Even as a nun, if I were to break my root vows, there are 4 of them, if I were to break one of my root vows, I would still have the other ones left. But I wouldn't be a nun any longer. Because the 4 root vows, if I break any of the secondary vows, I'm still a nun, but I should purify, I should restore the vow. But if I break any of the root vows, I can give it back. That's different. I can give back my vows, just as you can get a divorce, right? Without being unfaithful. Yeah. But here in this case, let's say I kill someone. If I were to kill intentionally a human being, I would break my root vow. One of my root vows. I will no longer be a nun. But I still have the remaining vows. I still have the other 3 root vows, and I still have my other vows. Does that mean I'm still a nun? No. And usually you give them back then. If someone has broken their vows, it happens. Some people can't control themselves. Usually it's about not having sexual intercourse. That's the one people, it's not like, oh, can't stop myself killing someone. That's usually not an issue. But it's that one. So sometimes people break their root vow, and then they're advised to give back the remaining vows. But these remaining vows are not nuns' vows, because you don't have any nuns' vows any longer. You broke the nun vow by breaking one of its sub-vows. Similarly here with the bodhisattva vow includes all the precepts, and if you've broken one, you no longer have the bodhisattva vows. You have the remaining ones, but they're not bodhisattva vows. They're sub-vows of the bodhisattva vow. Does that make sense? That's why we use the singular. So the bodhisattva vow. Okay. Anyway, engaging, so it's important to note, that according to many commentaries, practitioners must first cultivate bodhicitta, and only then can they fully receive the bodhisattva vow. Sometimes we take it before we become bodhisattvas. His Holiness the Dalai Lama may give the vow. In fact, he did a few days ago. He gave the vow, but you don't fully receive it until you're a bodhisattva. Because, it says here why. Some may disagree, but this is one way to look at it. So it's important to note that according to many commentaries, practitioners must first cultivate bodhicitta, and only then can they fully receive the bodhisattva vow, thereby transforming their aspiration of bodhicitta in engaging bodhicitta. So the moment you have the vow, by definition, it's now called engaging bodhicitta. It's not like the vow, it's not that bodhicitta changes. You wish for the same thing, but now it's influenced psychologically by the vow, right? This is because for the vow to be received, the awakening mind must already have been generated. You must have bodhicitta first before you take the vow, since one of its principal precepts is not to give up the awakening mind, not to give up bodhicitta. This is only possible if there's something that could in principle be abandoned, right? Which is namely bodhicitta. So you can't give something up. Don't give up bodhicitta. If you don't have bodhicitta, you can't give it up. This is similar to a vow that you may find very surprising. As a nun, not fully ordained, as a nun, as a novice nun. I'm a novice nun. As a novice nun, I'm not a fully ordained nun because this doesn't exist in this tradition yet. The full ordination, but they're established. They're trying to revive that. So they're in the process of reviving it. So far I haven't taken the full ordination. But the point is that I have the vow to be celibate. So I'm not allowed to break my vow out of sexual desire. It has to be there. Sexual desire has to be there. If for some reason I didn't have sexual desire, I couldn't be a nun. If I had something with my body, I couldn't have sexual desire. If I didn't have physically, I wasn't able to have sexual desire. I'm sure there must be some diseases or I don't know, maybe some people don't. I have no idea. But in this world, the way the Buddha set it forth, to be able to break your root vow, the one about celibacy, you must do so if you have sexual desire. So therefore, if you were raped, for instance, and you had no desire whatsoever, you're not breaking your root vow. So there must be that particular emotional state. But I couldn't have taken the vow in the first place if I didn't have sexual desire. See what I'm saying? So, yes?
But I've never killed another person, so when I take the vows, like the precepts to not kill someone, is it also not valid because I've never done it before?
No. I didn't say I must have had sexual desire. I must have had sex before I became a nun. That would be like you see, like, I didn't say you must have lived I mean,
But I also never, like, at least consciously had the wish to kill a human being.
No, but it's not about wishing to have sex, it's the ability to have sex, right? I mean, to physically be able to generate, even if you've never had, I mean, how many children become monks or nuns? Maybe they never had, I mean, probably they never had the sexual desire, but you must be able to have it. It doesn't mean that you must have had it beforehand, but the capacity must be there, so that potentially you could break the vow. So you potentially could have the wish to kill someone, right? If it was impossible for you to have the wish to kill someone, you couldn't become a monk or nun. The only exception is a Buddha. He became a monk when he was a Buddha, when he became enlightened, right? He took self-ordination. He's the only exception. But ordinarily, we take the vow only because there's something we need to refrain from. The Tibetan word vow means to refrain from something. But if it's easy for us to refrain from that, if it's not, then you can't take the vow. Yeah, something to think about. I must be able to steal. I must be able to lie. I must be able to have sexual contact. I mean, like to have the desire at least, or no, I don't need to have it now, but potentially if my body couldn't give rise to that desire, I couldn't have taken the vow in the first place. Don't worry, no one checks. It's not like, how did they find out? You know, it's like, no, it's not like this is the rule, you know the rule. I mean, in the end, whether I keep my vows purely or not, no one is checking. It's up to me. I take personal responsibility. And I don't think usually people stay monks or nuns if they've broken their vow. I think that's highly unlikely, but you never know. But what I'm trying to say is those are the rules. So in order to be celibate, it must be possible for you to give up celibacy by way of having a particular attachment or desire. So similarly here, in order to actually take the bodhisattva vow, you must be able you must have something to give up, which is the bodhisattva vow, right? To give up bodhisattva vow. So it's a similar kind of reasoning, if you like. It's slightly different, but there's some similarity. But not everyone agrees with this. Okay, some say you can even take the bodhisattva vow. Well, you can take it. I never said you can't take it, but you won't receive it. It's different to like taking it without fully receiving it. You're receiving something. It's extremely beneficial to take the vow before you become a bodhisattva. It's extremely beneficial. I'm getting into this. But nevertheless, there's a difference. So, such a commitment is only possible if there's something that could in principle be abandoned, namely bodhicitta itself. Nevertheless, it is said to be extremely beneficial to take the bodhisattva vow from, of course, a qualified lama, even without having generated the awakening mind. For although it's not truly received in that case, still we can take it. It plants powerful imprints in our continuum that support the future development of bodhicitta. So by all means, take it. Take the bodhisattva vow if you have a chance from a highly qualified master. Okay, so the bodhicitta on the small path of accumulation is called earth-like bodhicitta, because just as the earth provides the foundation for crops, trees, and so forth, likewise, bodhicitta, or the awakening mind, at this level serves as the basis from which all subsequent realizations grow and all higher paths are cultivated. All right, so just summarize that first level. What are you doing on that first level? First of all, you generate bodhicitta for the first time. For the first time, you spontaneously wish to become enlightened for the benefit of all sentient beings. But that's still called aspiration of bodhicitta because you haven't taken the vow yet. From then on, anytime you take the vow, you receive it fully. Okay? And it's called earth-like bodhicitta. Earth-like, from there, now everything arises. You're doing whatever you're doing from now on is for the benefit of all sentient beings. That's your goal. You want to do whatever you want to do it for the welfare of all sentient beings. So your actions with that motivation in the back of your mind, if you like, maybe not always active, but very much influencing everything you do, becomes very powerful. So your qualities, I mean, if you do something only for your own benefit, it has a very different effect on your mind. If you do it for the benefit of all sentient beings, incredible. It's like you've got the force of all sentient beings behind you, right? Okay, so it's earth-like bodhicitta. But on the small path of accumulation, bodhicitta can still deteriorate. You can lose it. That's on page 31. So it may still deteriorate. It may still disappear. All you need to think is, I want to become enlightened, but not for that jerk. That's all sentient beings minus one. So it's no longer all sentient beings. If you really, and that's possible. There are lots of accounts of like great practitioners of the past. Well, lots is maybe exaggerated, but there are some accounts of practitioners in the past. And we can definitely identify with that. You know, it's like you have that for a few days, like for the benefit of all sentient beings, you're inspired by His Holiness, by the teachings, you've been practicing, and then you meet this jerk. And it's almost like, not for them. Out. Right? And the moment you have that thought, yes?
I have a clarification.
Yes, please.
Question, because I understand the example, but to me it's very straightforward. But for me the question is more, what about fears or things like that? So, you know, it's kind of clear if I don't like someone, okay, this is how I can break the vow. But there are other reasons when I can't have compassion.
Because you're scared of them?
Because I'm scared.
Of them?
Yeah.
Oh, you're scared.
Like that. Like
okay.
I'm not ready to
all right.
face.
Yeah. Okay. Well, that's definitely a good point. It's not only always dislike. There could be, different reasons, but that's why it takes time to generate that type of mind. You go through, for instance, understanding that whatever scares you about them is not in the nature of their mind. I mean, they may be violent, they may be scary. I mean, acting in a scary way out of their own afflictions. So it's kind of like you go deeper than just looking at the ordinary level, the way they behave right now. You go deeper to access the potential they have. Understanding, well, right now, at this point, of course, they're harmful, but I want to help them to overcome whatever they do. You see, that's the goal. I'm trying to help them to overcome their negative actions, to overcome their afflictions. That which scares me right now, but I'm looking deeper. So it's almost like you relate to people in a slightly different way. You stop relating to them on the level of the obvious level, right now, driven by their afflictions. You dig deeper. So even you're still scared of them, I don't know whether the fear is still left in the end, whether there's really fear left. I'm wondering, I don't think His Holiness the Dalai Lama is scared of anyone, right? So it's like he loves everyone equally. I don't think Mao Zedong even, he always talks about how he met Mao Zedong. I think he talks about he had compassion for him. It was not like he was scared of him, right? What did he say? He said like, religion is poison. Yeah, he used that expression. And it's always was, oh no, there's no way to talk with him about the importance of the Dharma. He just has a different view. He doesn't recognize the beauty, the potential of this spiritual path. And so instead of getting scared, I think he had compassion. So it just takes time. It's not like something we can, unfortunately, it takes time, yeah. So to deal with the people like that scare us, and check deeper, like to access that level of compassion, understanding they're harming themselves more than anyone else, right? We may be scared of them, but they should be much more scared of themselves than we should be scared of them, right? But that takes some time. I mean, really understanding the nature of the mind and so forth. All right, how much did I do today? I hope I did a little bit more than last time. Yeah, kind of. Not really. 1, 2, 3. Okay, third page. Yeah, I'm sorry. I went through the whole thing kind of a little bit again, but I don't want you to look at it in an intellectual way. I want you to feel it. I want you to really feel it. See, like, you can do this. I mean, it may seem a little difficult at this point, but at least visualizing it. I mean, we can visualize we can fly and still it seems impossible, right? You can visualize yourself fly a huge plane. It'd be impossible. You wouldn't understand the first thing of what is this switch, what is this light. But you can still visualize yourself. And that already makes a change in the mind. Just that. That's why you have practices that psychologically, just a sec, psychologically are so effective, like Tantra. You visualize yourself to be already a Buddha. Right? Yeah, and initially it seems pretty fake. But that's like athletes, you know, who can't do certain things. They visualize they do it. And it already creates new connections in the brain. Right? This is a very simple psychological kind of method that they talk about. Like, before you can do certain sports, visualize you're already doing it. Watch it and visualize you're doing the movements, and then it becomes easier to do it. In fact, like gymnasts who sometimes do these really complicated kind of movements like somersaults and whatever, they visualize them in advance, train their brain, and then they can do them. That's exactly the same idea. Right? And the somersault seems really difficult to me. Ooh, I don't know how I would do it. A double one, a triple one, whatever, right? It seems impossible. So similarly here, yeah, just clarification. I know, Nathaniel, you also raised your hand. Is that a clarification or?
Yeah, I was just gonna say that she may have been actually talking about the vow, right? That you were scared about them, then the vow will break or not, like not the actual.
Would you break the vow? No, I think she's not talking about taking the vow yet. I think it's about generating bodhicitta in the first place.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah,
I mean...
Not breaking, I'm not sure.
Yeah, go ahead. Yeah, so Nathaniel made a good point. He was saying, would you break the vow or not? But giving up bodhicitta, if you give up bodhicitta after you've taken the vow, yeah, well, you lose engaging bodhicitta, basically. You lose the whole thing. Yeah, it depends on, if you just have fear, doesn't mean you don't want to become enlightened for their benefit, right? You can have fear, you can be scared of that person and still want them to become enlightened and still want them to take you there. So there's a difference.
Right, I think for a vow to be broken is to be intentional action, right? Or so.
That's true. For a vow to be broken, it needs to be intentional. But there are different types of vows. There are vows that are mainly where you mainly supposed to refrain from certain physical actions, physical or verbal actions. So our vows that we have as nuns, monks and nuns, they're all physical. Of course, with a certain motivation. But still, I need to, just the wish to kill someone, it doesn't mean I break my vow, in other words. So it's not purely mental. The vows of a monk or a nun are not purely mental. In fact, they're physical and mental. So not to kill someone, not to steal, not to have any sexual intercourse, for instance. But of course, the mental needs to be there, the wish to kill someone, and so forth. The Bodhisattva vow is a little different. It's all mental. It's just mental. So it's not about your physical actions. It's mainly, it's the mental state. So to give up bodhicitta, but Nathaniel is right. I need to want to give up bodhicitta. It's a conscious thought. So even though it's mental, it's still saying, I don't want to become enlightened for the benefit of that one particular person or for the benefit, I don't want to become enlightened for everyone who's got blonde hair or whatever. I mean, if I choose like a group of people, like maybe a certain, I don't know, religion they belong to, whatever is my reason. It could be one person, it could be more, it doesn't matter. But it has to be, as he says, the conscious decision, I'm not going to do it. So therefore, that's actually a good point. So just having fear of that person and maybe even disliking them is not enough. You can still, right? Sorry to interrupt you. Still disliking them or even being angry. Bodhisattva can still get angry.
Yeah. But okay, maybe I'm going down some rabbit hole, but for me it's also it goes in a different direction. I mean, in my understanding, aspirational bodhicitta, or in the end engaging bodhicitta, is when I have bodhicitta for the person who wants to murder me. Like I'm talking about this kind of fear. It's not just,
bodhicitta,
I don't
okay.
like someone, or someone's
Yeah.
trying to destroy the world. Yes, I can have compassion for that person. But if I'm threatened, and in this moment, and I'm wondering, does it go too far, or is it?
No, that's a good question.
For me, it's like I need to, or if a dog wants to attack me, or something like that. So in my understanding, this is where I want to go. I want to have this level of compassion that I'm able to meet that person and have this encounter. And is this?
That's a good question. I think it's an important question. So I repeat the question. So she's saying that it's when I'm talking about fear for someone, I'm not just talking about them, I don't know, destroying the world or something in general, though that means I also die, but more about them walking towards me with a knife and threatening to murder me, for instance, or even a dog that's racing towards me. But I think in that moment, I don't think there's much danger to think, as it's racing towards me, I'll give up bodhicitta for this. I think you just turn around and take off. I don't think there's a time. But it's still an important question. Your life is threatened by a particular person. This person is out to murder you. Let's say it's not like they're racing towards you and you suddenly remember to give up bodhicitta. No, it's not about that. It's about really someone being after us. This is really personal, isn't it? It's not like they want to murder just anyone and, it just happened to be. No, they want to specifically murder me. I mean, that'd be scary. You'd be like, am I safe in my room? Someone knocked at the door. Should I open it? Again, it's something we can identify with, to a certain degree. Imagine what it's like. Can I still have great compassion for that person? Yes, I think you can. I mean, it's hard. Do you want them to, would you go as far as saying, please kill me because I have compassion for you? No, the opposite. You don't want them to accumulate that negative karma. If you don't want them, if you really want to benefit them, you would do everything that they don't harm themselves, and they would do that by killing you. So by all means, you may even, force them, don't kill them, but, try not to, but at least to restrain them, so that they don't harm themselves and others. But you think of it like a child. Think of your own child. I don't think you're old enough to have a child, but but let's say you had a child. So if this child were to murder you, right? What your child is. Would you still love your child, right? I mean, it's kind of, for us who don't have children, it's kind of pretty theoretical. But I get that, I get that. Usually when you have a serial killer and everyone hates them, then not usually, but oftentimes it's only their mom. The only one on their side is their mom or their dad, and the rest of the world are against them, which shows the unconditional love that a mother has. So maybe take the example of motherly love. No matter what the child does, even if they're out, and there are, of course, unfortunately, cases of children murdering their own parents, and they still love their child, I'm pretty sure. So if that's possible, and they would still be scared of that child, and they would still run away and try to restrain the child if they could, but the love is there. So that's what we're looking for. It goes deeper. You see, the love of a parent, even if their child is a jerk, they still love their child. They may even be in the illusion that it's that's a biological factor. Even when they're born wrinkled and ugly, you still think they're the most beautiful. That's happened to my sister. I'm not just... Yeah, my sister tells me, it's really funny. She had a very difficult birth. In the end, she needed to have a cesarean. So for 10 or 12 hours, the child was stuck wherever it was stuck. So when it came out, it was pretty ugly. The head had been like, it was shaped in a funny, I mean, it all, after a few days, it just went back into its normal shape, but it had this longish kind of head, and it looked really funny. So like bright red and blue and everything. When fortunately they were able to save my sister. I mean, the doctors were with the cesarean, but they tried for a long time. So my sisters told me once, it was so funny, they took pictures right away, and she never looked at the pictures again. Somehow she forgot there's so many pictures, and one day she was like, huh? That's what he looked like? I thought he was the most beautiful creature in the world. He looked horrible. So it's the hormones in the body. She thought that was the most amazing living being there is because of the dopamine or whatever was released in her body. And so it's interesting how even when they're ugly, that this is just a biological mechanism, that you don't throw it away or something, I mean, sorry, but I'm not. If it's just that you bond with that child, that nature takes care of it. You think it's more beautiful than that beautiful child your neighbor has, because otherwise you'd get jealous or something. No, you want to take care of that child. So biologically, it takes care of it. But what I'm trying to say is that example, it's very good, where it goes deeper than just the outside, the external appearance, or what it looks like, how it behaves. It goes deeper. Here, of course, it's just on a biological level. However, or it's maybe just the fact it's my child. That's the reason you love your child. Even if it was exchanged at birth. It's something, it's interesting. It's not, you may believe it's your child, and that's enough. In that moment of birth, of course, it's hormones. But even later on, no matter what they do, you will always love them because they're your child. So you go deeper. That's what I meant with love, that goes deeper. So similarly here, we're trying to generate a kind of love and compassion that goes deeper than the afflictions and how they behave on the basis of that. You learn to connect to them on a deeper level, just as a mother connects to her child on a deeper level. It doesn't matter how they act. Of course, they try to help them, they try to discipline, they try to educate them, but they don't love them any less even if they become a drug addict or a murderer, or whatever, right? Same thing. I mean, drug addicts, of course, that's something different, but like stealing and killing because of their drug addiction. That's really important to understand, that we can, and motherly loves, or fatherly love for that matter, shows us that it's possible. It shows us, it's such a beautiful analogy. You can love anyone. Mothers and fathers show us, they do. And sometimes children get exchanged at birth. It happens, it happened many times. And they're not their biological child, but they believe it is their child, and that's enough. So here it's like, you believe that they have the potential to become a Buddha, they have that pure mind, and that is enough. If you really understand it, you really understand that, or even you're convinced, then you can love them. That's why we need to learn all this. We need to learn all this. It has to make sense. Really understanding the nature of the mind. Every sentient being is so precious. They have the same mind in its nature as his homeless's mind, as the Buddha's mind. Very important. Right now we go, yeah, sounds nice. But we're not convinced. That's why it's harder. We look at what's there. The messy part, the scary part, whatever. We believe totally in that. Believe that to be the person. It's not just that, we don't see underneath what's going on. We even think their actions are the person. We're angry with them. We're not angry with their actions. Right? That's why we're learning all this. To first understand it intellectually and bring it to an emotional level. You can't do any of this unless it goes, you kind of feel it. You feel it with your entire being. That this is right, it makes sense. And feeling it takes time. First you go over it and over it again. It's like brushing your teeth. You need to feel disgusted not brushing your teeth. I didn't feel disgusted in the beginning. I was glad I didn't do it. Save those 5 minutes or 2 minutes, more times to read my comics. Right? But now I feel like, ugh, I don't want to do anything else. I want to get out of the way. Now I feel it. And it takes time to get that feeling. And we do it through the intellectual. Okay. All right. All right. Okay. Bodhicitta may still deteriorate, and practitioners may lose the path of the universal vehicle from their continuum, in which case they are no longer bodhisattvas. But it can be restored at any time. Right? -1. Okay? So tomorrow, add that person, bodhicitta is back. So it's like once you... It's not like, oh my God, I'm done for the next 10,000 years or something, right? No. It's like usually we've come that far. Our mind is has so familiarized with this love and compassion for others. And you had that moment, okay. However, it's not like you're doomed. No, you're more likely to get it back, right? Besides training in generosity, morality, patience, and the other perfections, bodhisattvas on the path of accumulation also continue to cultivate the 3 factors. So, of course, they practice the perfections, generosity, they practice morality, they practice patience. But now, of course, supported by or sustained by bodhicitta. Very important. Making their practices very powerful. Very, very powerful. But they continue also to cultivate the 3 factors. They meditate on great compassion. You still meditate. Although you have great compassion, you continue to meditate on it. You make it stronger. It has to become stronger and stronger and stronger. And bodhicitta, they grow stronger and stronger. And they need to realize emptiness. Right? You have to realize emptiness. So if you've already realized emptiness before you generated bodhicitta, that would be best. Or if just your mind doesn't work that way, you first generate bodhicitta and then realize emptiness. That's also possible. But you need to realize it now. You won't be able to move to the middling stage, at least reflecting on emptiness, at least reflecting on it. Okay, so what does it mean? This is because, with respect to the cognition of emptiness, practitioners of sharp faculties deepen their conceptual realization. They already realized emptiness before they generated bodhicitta, whereas those of weaker faculties must work towards newly attaining it. This is because bodhisattvas of sharp faculties realized emptiness inferentially, in dependence on correct reasoning, before generating bodhicitta, and therefore before entering the path of the universal vehicle, while bodhisattvas of weaker faculties generate bodhicitta first. Therefore, the latter, and so weaker, and please don't get caught up in these words like, oh, I am of weaker faculty. No. It's just in relation to that. They may be sharper in relation to something else, but it's just in relation to emptiness that we talk about sharp faculty, weak faculty. This is really important, especially when you understand the Tibetan way of thinking, for instance. They measure intelligence in a slightly different way. They say there's so many different intelligences. Some are intelligent because they can memorize well. That's a type of intelligence. Some people don't remember anything. Have a hard time. Then there's the intelligence of being able to speak eloquently. Then there's the intelligence of understanding reasoning. There's the intelligence. There's so many different types. Like if you have children, some have the intelligence of drawing really well. It's also a type of intelligence, a special mental ability. It's all mental, basically. It comes from the mind. These are all considered to be a type of intelligence. Therefore, to say this person is intelligent, it's only in relation to a certain ability. It's very hard to find someone who's got it all, right? Unless you're enlightened. But I think that's really important. Sometimes, until recently in the West, we thought intelligent meant, you get good grades in school. I have one nun friend who's not that good at reading and writing, and even in philosophy and debating. But she's so sharp when it comes to practical things. Unbelievable. She can use a mobile phone like no one else. She just figured it out. It's not like she's playing with her phone all the time. She just has this practical intelligence, and I go to her to have stuff, when my phone doesn't do what it's supposed to do, I go to her. She started learning to read and write when she was 18. But she's so bright. Yet it's mainly with like practical things. So I consider extremely intelligent. So here, sharp faculty, weak faculty is not like saying, let's divide the world into those stupid ones and intelligent. It's not like that. It's just from the point of view realizing emptiness before generating bodhicitta. That's when you use that. That's usually, right? It's kind of seen like you believe that enlightenment is possible versus you come to an understanding that it's possible. Because once you realize emptiness, you understand that enlightenment is possible. You understand that there is no monster in the closet, and so therefore I can remove all these emotional states that come from misperceiving that. Versus the other person who hasn't realized emptiness yet, they believe it's possible, but it's not as reliable. Because you could fall from it you're much more likely to fall from it because you have no first-hand understanding. Oof, 6. Today I didn't we have some questions. So if you have further questions, are there any in the group?
Just a couple.
Just a couple. Good. All right, I'll try to address them next time. I don't know where my phone, maybe it's in my room or in my bag. I forgot to put it next to me. But anyway, sometimes it's good to stay with your questions and try to figure out the answer. We are actually very much encouraged to do that. We're encouraged to just sit with a question and try to see that after from everything we've learned, maybe we can figure out the answer ourselves. And that's the most powerful way to come to an answer, if you figure it out yourself. So I'll give you the chance.
We give you a book at the end of the course with all our questions accumulated over the course.
And I give you the book back and say, figure it out. No, but a lot of the questions hopefully will be addressed anyway, but I'll look at the group when I get home. All right, thank you. So all that's left is to, with our entire being, dedicate whatever virtue we've accumulated. Okay, so let's do that. Not just reciting the words, but the first prayer, of course, to pray for our great masters like His Holiness the Dalai Lama, those who embody the Dharma, who live the Dharma, to themselves have a long life, to continue to guide us through their examples and their words. That's the first prayer. And the rest is, you'll see, self-explanatory. Okay. In the snow-encircled land, you are the source of benefit and bliss. Avalokiteshvara, Denzin Gyatso, please remain in life until samsara ends. May the precious Bodhi mind, not yet born, arise and grow. May that born have no decline, but increase forevermore. May the precious view of emptiness, not yet born, arise and grow. May that born have no decline, but increase forevermore. Okay, great. Thank you.